Hi, everyone. My name's Richie. I'm one of the co-founders at PriceLabs. We're about to start the webinar on automating your operations, and we'll take a minute. We'll let people funnel in, and then we'll get started. We're still getting people funneling in, so maybe another minute before we get started. Thank you so much. So if you've just recently joined, we're taking a minute to let people join in, and then we'll get started on this webinar. This is the most uncomfortable time in a webinar, by the way, when you're, so everyone who's listening in, once again, thank you for your patience. The most uncomfortable time in a webinar when as a panelist or as a host, you're sitting in silence. Hopefully all of you are having a great day. While we're waiting, tell us in chat where you're joining from so that we know a little bit about you. Okay. I think we're at a decent number of participants already. There are a few going in and out. We'll get cracking. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Today, we have Markus from Guesty for host here with us. We also have Daniela on the call with us from Guesty for host. She'll be helping us with Q&As. The topic for today's webinar is automating your operations. We haven't done a lot of partner webinars before, but when in speaking with Markus, we realized that this is a topic that we should touch on because a lot of owners and early stage property managers who have just started on their property management journey are not using property management systems or are not automating their tech stacks. So I asked Guesty for host team and for Markus specifically to say, hey, can you come and talk a little bit about why it makes sense, why you should do this, why it matters, right? So that's our topic for today. We're going to cover why automate your operations, how it matters, things that you can do with automating your operations. And we have an excellent presenter in Markus here with us for that. Markus is presently the GM for Guesty for host. If you've not heard of Guesty, Guesty is one of the largest property management systems in the vacation rental space. And Guesty for host is their product feature that a product that caters to those you're starting to get into the world of property management, or you're an owner with one or three properties. And Markus can probably explain this better than I can. But I also want to take a quick 30 seconds on Markus's background, right? So Markus is phenomenal. He's spent 20, 30 years in tech space. So he in general understands automation quite a bit and engineering quite a bit. He was VP of engineering at a few different companies before he started a property management company called MyVR, and he ran that for 10 years. So he understands a lot about the property management, the vacation rental space itself. So I think today we are poised for a great webinar with Markus. Before I hand over the reins to Markus, I do want to get a sense of who's already using a PMS and if you've considered a PMS in the past. So I wish there was a possibility of getting some qualitative answers. Unfortunately, there isn't, but I'm going to launch this poll. So if you could respond to that. With that, while you're responding to that poll, Please note, as always, this webinar is getting recorded. So if at some point you have to step out, feel free to let us know. We will anyways be sending a recording via email and also uploading it on our YouTube channel. We will also be sharing this recording through various other channels over time. You cannot speak. It's a one-sided webinar this time, where only Marcus and I have the ability to speak, but you can ask your Q&As, and I would highly recommend, as Marcus goes through his presentation, please do ask Q&As. At the bottom of your screen you see this Q&A thing, so type in your questions there, and we'd love to take them either during the webinar or at the end of the webinar. I've one terminology that I should clarify, because I realized I've heard this on customer calls. I kept saying the word PMS. If you're not familiar with that, that means property management system, right? So if you've used a property management system, or if you currently use a property management system, which is not Airbnb or Booking.com or VRBO, it means you're using a software to connect to these systems, right? Then that's a property management system, and hopefully either you're using it or not using it. If you can go in, I'm seeing about 70% participation. If I can get a few more votes in, you'd see it pop up on your screen. And Marcus, I'm not sure if you see the poll as well on your screen.
Yeah, we have
okay
75% now. So
yeah, so we're getting there. Just okay, cool. I think I'll stop the poll. I'll also share results with just about everyone, so you guys can know. It's interesting that 90% of you have considered using a PMS in the past, but only 67% or only 33% of 67% of you use a PMS today, which is okay, interesting. For my understanding, I thought most of us were not on a property management system, but very good to know. With that, we will hand over things to Marcus. We'll walk through why a property management system. We'll talk about certain feature sets of Guesty for host, and we will take in questions. Marcus, over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I want to compliment you on how well you. So yeah, excited to be a part of this, and have a few slides to go through. I'll try and go through them quickly, because I know we also want to save some time at the end for Q&A. We've had a number of questions that got asked actually prior to the webinar, and then I think, as Richie alluded to, we have a Q&A button. Please feel free to use the Q&A button here to submit any questions you might have, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end of the session here. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Full screen. Richie, am I good? Can you see me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. All right, so as mentioned, the topic today is automation. For, I think, pretty much everyone on this webinar, there's at least some familiarity with automation. You are using or very familiar with PriceLabs tools, and so they're obviously one of the best out there in executing on the automation side of things. And I'm gonna take it a bit further, a little more broad. A PMS, or a property management system, is something that's kind of across the full spectrum of what you can be doing on the automation side. And so we'll have a bit of a more breadth first conversation today about this. Okay, so jumping in, there's something I wanted to kind of just cover first in all of this, which is setting the stage as to why automation is important now. And so first things first, looking at the industry itself, I wanted to bring up that supply has grown incredibly quickly. If we look at the last year, it's a 23% increase in listings here in the US in the short-term rental space. That's I think we were at like 2 or 3% growth the year before that. So we're seeing a huge spike in inventory entering the market. As you can see from the Market Watch quote here, short-term rentals spiked during the pandemic. So we're seeing now the lagging supply entering the market and becoming short-term rental inventory, which we'll get to and what the implications are for us in the space. On the flip side, demand appears to be cooling. Airbnb recently reported that they're moderating their forecasts for bookings during this holiday season. And you can see from some hosts here talking out on the web, there are a lot of folks who are feeling that the demand is, in fact, at least in their locale, starting to drop. Then, of course, there's the if we take a step back outside of our industry, the macroeconomic concern around, are we going to be, or are we already in a recession? And you've seen all of the headlines that speak to this, but short-term rental hosts are out there chatting about this now as well. Many of them feeling it. As a pretty pointed quote here, hey hosts, in case you didn't get the memo, we are already in a recession. So that is probably why you have low bookings. Okay, bye. Probably an oversimplification, but I think we all can understand the sentiment of where that host is coming from. So there's change. I think we're all getting used to change as a constant, being in this space, or I guess being alive for the last couple of years, but in our space as well. But I think there's room for optimism. So Airbnb had their best ever third quarter. So even though forecasts may be lower, they're still doing really well. They're obviously the largest company in our space, specifically focused on short-term rentals. So they're a pretty good proxy for how we can view the future. They also bring up cause for optimism. The Airbnb likes to bring up that they actually came out of our last big recession back in 2008, 2009. But I think looking at the industry now, you can highlight our category of short-term rentals has gained a lot of traction. COVID-19 was a force multiplier on that. All these people experienced short-term rentals for the first time. They are now users or guests for the short-term rental industry. And I think the supply thing, while it drives competition for all of us as hosts, it also increases the availability of our type of accommodation in the space. And so the expectation is it will drive more guests with more options to come in. So while we may need to be evaluating different tactics, midterm rentals, maybe rates are lowered a bit in order to increase occupancy. All of this is going to be very geo-specific. In the end, the space does seem to be on a healthy trajectory, but we're probably not going to see the crazy boom cycle we had over the last couple of years, but still a survivable environment where there's room for growth. To that end, what do you need to do? Well, nothing's changing in terms of you have a ton of operations that still need to be handled. This is a non-comprehensive list of things that happen for any given operator. Some of these you may be automating, some of these you may be doing manually, some of these you may not be doing at all. And there may be things outside of this as well. But the general idea here is you probably can't do less. And in fact, you're likely going to need to do more. And then likely need to do more to stay competitive, but potentially need to do more and do it better than you've been doing now. We talked earlier about more inventory coming into the market. That means it's going to get tougher for your listing to stand out. That means the guest experience and everything else about how you're running your operation, the more that can be top notch, the better off you're going to be across the board in terms of making your way through this environment. So that's a lot of things you need to do. And this may be your full-time job. This might be a side gig. In any case, all of it takes a lot of time. And when something takes a lot of time, time's a zero-sum game. That means you're not doing other things. So that might be other things for you to do outside of short-term rentals. That might be other things for you to make your short-term rental business better. And so the answer we like to come back to in the technology space is automation. This is your friend to drive you through an increasingly competitive environment in which guest expectations continue to rise. A few things you can do with automation. So you can save time, costs. Obviously, you've heard the term cash is king during a recession. If you can use automation to drive down your costs, that's something specifically advisable during a recession. There's communication automation that helps with guest satisfaction, that helps drive up your rankings on the listing sites. There's a lot of sort of downstream effects that are positive from automation in general, but certainly with automating your communications. You can use contactless check-ins. Plenty of data to suggest that is what guest prefers now. And then keep you mentally sane. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of things you can decide are going to cause worry or that just do cause worry. And that if you can put automation in place that gives you the peace of mind that your business is being run effectively and efficiently, that can have mental health benefits as well. So now I'm going to insert my company here. So Guesty for hosts. These are all things that we focus on. As was mentioned by Richie, our target market for Guesty for hosts is really folks who are in the 1 to 3 listing range generally. We have a lot of people who do this as a side gig. We have a lot of folks who are looking to optimize, but not necessarily turn into a professional full-time type of operation where it's like inventory growth, personnel growth, et cetera, are the primary goals. We really want to be able to help you put your business on autopilot. And as I said before, give you the peace of mind that things are just happening correctly so that you can focus your attention elsewhere. All right, let's jump into a few of the things that you can do within our system, but also just generally that are good practices where automation comes into play. So one that comes up maybe the most frequently is communication. So you can automate your messages to your guests. These can be personalized. You can have almost like a automated Q&A type setup where if someone's asking common questions, you can have the response at the ready. You can automate the flow of reviews. So a booking takes place, you can automatically give a review of a guest who hopefully then in turn gives a review of you. And then there are many other things across this spectrum that you can do within our system. But we do have a video here from one of our customers to talk a little bit more about it.
I typically spend around 1 to 3 hours per week managing 4 properties on Airbnb that cash flow us over $30,000 per month on average. Ordinarily, it would take many more hours to manage multiple Airbnb properties, but I wanted to give you guys a quick rundown of the software that I use to manage the business. It's called Guesty for Hosts. It allows you to manage your listings from one place. So if you list on both Airbnb, VRBO, and even Booking.com, you can manage reservations through a unified calendar and a unified inbox for guest communication. You can create custom automated messages for guest communications. So anytime somebody books one of our properties, the reservation confirmation, check-in and check-out instructions, house rules are all automatically sent to guests without me even having to think about it. One of the things I love most about this platform is the auto review feature for Airbnb. You can toggle this on and it will automatically review guests on my behalf. This is important because the more guests that you review, they're more likely to return a review for your property.
All right, so that's from a customer benefiting on the platform. So again, automated communications, high, if not at the top of the list in terms of automation. It's one of the more high overhead tasks hosts need to deal with.
I typically spend around
sorry about that. All right. Second category here, cleaning tasks. I won't go too deep into this, but the concept of creating a templatized list. This is what needs to happen for this unit, getting it in front of your cleaner, ensuring they're going through and checking it off. And that communication can be set up over a medium that your cleaners can use. And so like a mobile web experience is something we have in place to make sure that they're in the field able to communicate with you. And so another big high overhead maintenance or operations oriented tasks that can be benefited by automation. Third one here, I'm not going to dive too deep into this. This is Richie's land, but smart pricing. So as mentioned earlier, understanding how to price in the current fluid environment is going to be a challenge for many, and something that may require a lot of change and a lot of diligence. If you can automate that or outsource that to a company like PriceLabs, that's a big win for you. Probably also a big win for your bottom line, as they look at macro trends on your behalf and actually apply that knowledge to your individual listing to give you an edge. So don't need to go too deep there, but that's, I think, a very powerful one and has a very direct impact on your revenues. Then there's this concept of being a hub. For channel management is the most obvious case, but for those of you using PriceLabs and not using a PMS, the way that could look is Guesty for hosts sits here in the middle. PriceLabs is updating your pricing on the source of record here in Guesty for hosts, and then that automatically gets propagated to wherever you're connected. And so getting everything synced up through one spot can eliminate a lot of the overhead and a lot of room for error that would occur if you were trying to do this manually or using iCal or other technologies that don't have as deep of an integration. This is a little bit of an aside, but you'll see one of the channels here is actually a website. This is something you can set up super quickly in Guesty for hosts is your direct booking website. A couple button clicks and you have a spot that people can book directly with you. It always surprises me how many folks, hosts in particular, do not have this in place. I think the most poignant example of where the value is here is if you get a repeat guest, you're always going to want to book them directly. Don't send them out to a channel where the channel could be putting all of your competitors in front of that guest. This is someone who wants to book with you. Give them an online experience to book directly with you, and don't risk losing that guest to one of your competitors. There are also advantages with fees and everything else, but it's, I think, an important enough one to put out here as a channel that you should be considering. All right, lastly, smart locks. The platform integrates with these major lock providers. Getting someone in and out of your unit is another high overhead task. If you can streamline that, that's a huge win for both you and the guest. As I mentioned earlier, guests are more and more showing that they just want to be able to get in there as simply as possible. They're not necessarily looking for a lot of human interaction. COVID spurred a lot of that, but I think as people experienced it, they realized that there's big value for them not to have to be reliant on another human to make their stay possible. All right, one other Guesty for hosts user here to talk about some of the automation or the effects of automation.
As an Airbnb host, you constantly have to ask yourself the question, am I running the business or is the business running me? What I mean by that is, do you have a set of systems set in place that is your first line of defense, your first responders, so you can be working on the business, not in the business? If you don't develop those systems, all of a sudden you're going to get involved in Airbnb and it's going to be impossible to scale. It's going to be exhausting. That's why you hear me preach all the time why it's so important to have a property management software like Guesty for hosts. For me, Guesty for hosts is my first line of defense. It's how I automate my communication with the cleaner. It's how I have all of my automated messages set up. So when someone books or someone has a very standard question, it has an automatic response. Also syncs my calendar so that I don't get any double bookings. So if you don't already have a property management software lined up for your Airbnb business, it's one of those things that, in my opinion, is a non-negotiable when running an Airbnb.
All right, so that's another pitch for automation and the positive impact it can have on your business.
As an Airbnb host, you constantly...
I'll have to learn how to pass through YouTube videos without replaying them. All right, and then in terms of the data, the numbers speak for themselves. We generally see people are taking 60% of the time off of their, saving 60% of the time that they had been spending on repetitive tasks. And then we quantify that generally, or people are saving on average 40 plus hours a week by virtue of setting up these tools for automation. So our customers in general are very happy with what turns out to be sort of the force multiplier of adding automation to their business. Okay. We have a promo for folks attending this. If anyone enters in the code PriceLabs 200, you can go to host.guesty.com, sign up for a free trial, add this code in. If you choose to purchase, you'll get $200 off our annual subscription. I'll keep that up for a second, then move on. Lastly, we have a quick poll we were going to run. I think Richie, you might need to do that, or I don't know if
I am. Yeah. I'm just launching it.
Cool.
As we're launching it, the poll's live. We just want to understand a little bit more about audience who's on the webinar. I've realized that there are a lot more Guesty users already than I would have anticipated, which is a great thing. Congrats, Markus. You're doing a great job of catching in a lot of customers. But Markus, while we're waiting for the poll as it's happening, and I did launch it, right? Because I can't see it anymore.
Yeah, it's
where
going.
it go? Okay, I have now missed my screen. Okay, I see it's happening. Cool. So as it's going on, here's a question very simply for you, Markus. What is the ROI of me using a PMS, Guesty for host, versus just doing this manually, right? There are some users who are like, don't send me this information yet, or not considering it. Like, why? Like, why should I buy another software?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's also reasonable to address that it might not be for everyone. I think an obvious case where it's not necessarily a great fit is if you have your primary residence listed on Airbnb, 4 or 5 weekends a year when you take off on vacation. That's probably not enough volume or sophistication required for you to run that a PMS makes sense for you. I think in the event that you do have a full-time short-term rental though, or one that's listed basically full-time, there are a lot of arguments for it. I think some people may feel trepidation in that it feels like adding sophistication or complexity, I should say, to their operation, right? So there are some tools that the channels already have. But a PMS takes you outside of that and gives you a lot of value beyond that. I talked about direct bookings and a website earlier. There's risk mitigation in terms of setting yourself up with a multi-channel strategy, not being completely dependent on one channel. There's optimization opportunity that comes from that, where you can start to look at changing prices in different areas, reaching different audiences by virtue of being on multiple channels. There's also the case of being a hub. If you have several tools you would like to tie together, that's not something you can do through a channel. You need to have your own software to accomplish that. And so if you want to use PriceLabs, but then some other system for a different task, those all need to connect to one spot. And that's where software comes in to help execute that. So those are a few of the ways that I think advantages can be seen. But yeah, I can tell from the poll, we have, I don't know why some people said they don't want to use it, which is fine. But, we could tell from the poll earlier that it was, maybe a third of the audience didn't have a property management software system. And so that's some decision-making for them moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The other question that's come up, Markus, if you can just quickly tell us, you have 2 products in your portfolio, Guesty for host, Guesty Pro. How should someone think about this as they end up on Guesty website? Which one should they go for?
I don't know if you did that on purpose. That's a really good segue.
No, I didn't. It's one of the questions. So
one of my final slides here is Guesty is a large company. And so we actually have several product offerings. On the PMS side of things, we have Guesty for hosts, which we've been talking about today. Again, this is geared more toward what are the highest ROI things in tech that I can set up quickly by myself and run this business, kind of just with the peace of mind that everything is going to be run smoothly. But then Guesty, the Guesty that's been around for 10 years is what we now call Guesty for pros as well, is a little bit more upmarket in terms of the professionalization of your business. And so the ability to get in there, do sophisticated things around pricing yourself, around accounting, around analytics, and really thinking about how do I grow my portfolio, that's when you fall into the bucket of Guesty for pros. So really underneath the Guesty umbrella, the concept is for any type of property at any size of business, anywhere in the world, Guesty has a product for you.
Understood. Very cool. Can you talk a little bit about, there are a bunch of questions around, can Guesty for host connect to this? Can Guesty for host connect to this lock, that lock, different languages, etc., etc.? Can you talk a little bit about what's in future, right? Like most people, when they're buying softwares, they're also not just thinking about today, they're thinking about future-proofing themselves. Maybe, and I might be putting you on the spot here, so say, hey, no, don't do this. But yeah, tell us a little bit about Guesty for host. What does that look like in terms of integrations? Whether there's some questions around booking engine, there's some questions around maybe potentially locks, there are some questions around different languages, so all kind of sort of related. So tell us how that would work. What are you thinking?
Yeah, sure. So I was gonna move away from this slide, but I'll leave it up for a second because it's actually relevant in the case of this answer. So Guesty as a whole has a huge marketplace with many connections. And so if you look at the Guesty product offering, or Guesty for pros, it has multi-language support. It has a huge marketplace, I think of over 100 partners. And so that ecosystem is growing and is very relevant as someone gets more sophisticated with their business and professionalizes their business. Guesty for hosts, a little bit of history, like Guesty for hosts used to be a software company called Your Porter. Your Porter was acquired by Guesty. We took that in, rebranded it as Guesty for hosts, and now we are starting to basically share with Guesty on the back end some of the things that they've already built out. So at this time, we have, I can't see this question specifically, but yes, we have lock integrations. We obviously have pricing integrations with PriceLabs. And then we are now looking at filling out the other sort of categories of integrations within the ecosystem, borrowing from what Guesty has already built.
Got it. That's super helpful. There are certain specific questions around certain lock providers or certain providers. I would say we'll take them one-on-one via email later. There's a question around, and there I think 2 or 3 people have asked this. Airbnb already does automated messaging. What is the differentiation? What are we getting?
Yeah. Here, let me just pop this up in case anyone has direct questions. You can also ask us directly, and we're happy to help. And then I'll stop sharing so we can be more conversational. Yeah, so Airbnb has actually built out many more tools than they historically had over the past sort of year and a half. And so they are offering much more. So that's true. Where they generally have sort of a ceiling, though, is this concept of making all of this work anywhere. And so the unified inbox that you can have within a PMS which then can apply all of your same rules and automations like guest communications to, that can never exist within a single channel. They're really only able to operate against their own ecosystem. And so there's an inherent limitation on what they're able to provide in that case. So that's sort of a general answer. Specifically, there are certain triggers and types of communications that they don't have, sometimes because of that ceiling, sometimes because I don't know what their incentives might be. And so as a company that's focused on automations, we're always trying to go kind of above and beyond and providing a level of control that we think is going to put our customers in the driver's seat.
Very cool. Very cool. There are certain other questions around, like, can you also set up platforms like VRBO and Airbnb? What does the booking engine look like? Maybe chat a little bit about that. What does and I know, like, from PriceLabs perspective, for us, we feel like, hey, you don't want to spread too thin on channels, but you should be on a few channels. Maybe you should start thinking about if you have 1, 2, 3 properties, really hard to really get bookings on your website other than repeat bookings. So it's about how much you prioritize, how much time you spend on that website, really to optimize it, right? Versus the repeat bookings websites. But talk to us a little bit about what's the channel management philosophy at GFH. Can they easily connect to VRBO, Airbnb? How does that work? Talk to us a little bit about that, booking.com, etc.
Sure. So again, Guesty for Hosts has a different strategy here than Guesty for Pros. For Pros, it's,
Everything
I don't know,
under the sun.
50 plus channels that you may be able to connect with. For Guesty for Hosts, we generally have the same philosophy that you're describing that PriceLabs has, which is, there are a couple meaningful channels that you should really be looking at and that are worth it to try and make the leap into a multi-channel strategy. And so Airbnb is actually kind of at the core, right? And so we have a direct connection, of course, to Airbnb. We have Vrbo, we have booking.com, and then the direct channel that you mentioned. I'll highlight quickly, we are just about to switch over to a completely new Vrbo integration that actually borrows from what Guesty has already built. And so this is all part of our strategy of basically borrowing from sort of the industry leading tech at Guesty and then putting that into this offering from Guesty for Hosts.
Very, very cool. Alrighty. Hey guys, if you have specific questions about your account, feel free to send them in here, but we won't be able to take specific questions of the account. We will Guesty team, I'll send those over to Guesty so that Guesty team can address them one-on-one. There is, do I need one PriceLabs listing connection when using Guesty for Host across all channels? David, that's correct. What you would do is you would connect PriceLabs to, so you'll have your Guesty account, Guesty for a Host account, and that will have a property that will be connected to, and Markus had the screen where that property goes to Airbnb, VRBO, booking.com, your direct booking website, wherever. And when you connect PriceLabs to Guesty for Host, you will send prices. PriceLabs will send prices to Guesty for Host, and Guesty for Host will send it to all of these different channels. You will only be paying for just that one property that PriceLabs is connected to Guesty for Host. While I'm very proud of our Airbnb, our VRBO integration, I think as channel managers, Markus and their team do a fantastic job. So I would highly recommend looking into that, because what we don't do as a pricing provider, if you're connecting us directly to Airbnb or VRBO, we send prices, but we don't manage channel connectivity. So we don't make sure that you don't get a double booking. We're not really taking those things and sending it over to your cleaners or whatsoever, right? You can't in PriceLabs block your calendar and it'll automatically block on Airbnb or VRBO. That's something Guesty for Host does. We pride ourselves in really having the intelligence around pricing and being able to give you tools, right? But if you're looking for that advanced capabilities around managing channels, I would really recommend Guesty for Host is the perfect place to start. And then maybe you can also eventually maybe migrate to Guesty for Pro, which ties to a question that's come up here. What does that transition mean, Markus? Like I start with GFH, can I transfer to Guesty for Host simply? Is it, sorry, if I start with GFH, can I transfer to Guesty for Pros simply? Is it complicated? What does that, talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So yes, you can absolutely move. So if you wanted to upgrade to Guesty, the way I would say it now is that it's simpler than if you were to do it within a company that didn't have both offerings under one roof. And so we kind of hold your hand and make sure that things can happen on your timeline and that we get things moved over. Obviously, we've done this a fair amount, and so it's a kind of a hardened process within the company. And then I can say it's going to get even better. I mentioned earlier that Guesty for Host is starting to basically use more and more of Guesty's tech. Eventually, that means you're kind of already on Guesty when you're using Guesty for Hosts, in which case, we're looking to get it to an extremely simple process to basically flip a switch and have you over.
Very cool. Very cool. Alrighty. And this is very specific question. I don't know if you want to take it. I have my own thoughts on it, but some PMS solutions have unstable connection with VRBO. Is it a stable connection? I don't know if you can talk to that.
Yeah. I would say our connection has been okay, good, but not stable enough. And that's why we've rebuilt the entire thing and are leveraging now Guesty's connection. I'm getting ahead of myself, but the Guesty for Host user base will be hearing shortly about what this all looks like and the plan.
Very cool. You heard it here first. Sneak peek. Very, very cool. Markus, there are a few people, of course, who are on the fence, who are thinking about maybe yes, reach out, not ready to start a trial. I think one of the biggest barriers that I see people have is, what is the time commitment? I'm an owner. I only have so much time, right? I have to manage my properties, and then now I have to get this tool set up. Sure, I'll get benefits of automation, but then there is this onboarding time, etc. Talk to us a little bit about what does that onboarding process, what does that initial process look like?
Yeah, I mean, at a high level, it can be very quick. You come in, you connect to Airbnb, you can pull everything in a very seamless way. And within a very short time period, you can have the basics of your account set up. And then there's time, like you can optimize and like discover things and add things over time, but very quickly you can be in a position where Guesty for Hosts is the hub for your business in which you are executing the vast majority of your tasks. I mean, the data plays this out. We can see that the folks that come in, most of them set everything up on day zero. And so they are showing us that it's possible to do things very quickly.
Very cool. Okay. Some rapid fires, Mark. Markus, there's a question that's to some specific PMSs. So I'm going to generalize this, but tell us where GFH differentiates from other PMSs. What are the key benefits? Maybe, yeah. Tell us that.
Sure. One that always stands out is mobile. We know our customers are often not at a desk. That could be for various reasons. That could be they're out at the units helping with operations. That could be they have a different job that takes them out of their house. But unlike the more sort of enterprise pro type of experience where you might have staff that are focused on reservationists, where they would be sitting at a desk kind of doing that and need to be in there all the time. We want to make sure that our customers who are generally doing all of the operation have the ability to execute that on any medium in any place. And so just about everything you can do on your computer, you can do on your phone. for Guesty for hosts, which I think is a big win for the customers that we're going after with this product. So I'd say that's the biggest.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Who is a typical Guesty for host user and who isn't? Like who isn't? I think you've described you're a very professional revenue manager, very professional manager. Maybe you want to go to Guesty Pros. Is there any other user type that you would say, hey, not really?
Yeah, I think if you kind of look at the spectrum of host personas, yeah, on the one end you have these professionals, and I would even say kind of like budding professionals. If you already know you're going to need to be able to do certain things, whether it's like accounting or advanced analytics or other stuff like that, then it might make more sense for you in our ecosystem to be on Pro from the beginning. If you look on the other side, I mentioned earlier, if you're kind of doing the primary residence hosting thing, I don't think you necessarily need software. You might benefit from it, but generally speaking, there's just not enough volume, operational volume for you to really, I think, see the ROI on that. And so those are sort of the two ends that I think frame the world in which we provide the most value.
Very cool. Very cool. Can you talk a little bit about the pricing for Guesty for Pros? Guesty
Sure.
for hosts, sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
That's fine. That's why I had this slide. It requires explaining. Yeah. So monthly, it's $49 a month for the first listing, and then $25 more per month for each listing after that. And then there's a 10% discount if you sign up annually.
Very, very cool. Very cool. And again, guys, there is a promo that Markus has for us. Thank you so much for joining in on this webinar. I'll be sending out that promo via email, but also, yeah, I'll be sending out that via email so that you can access that promotion and reach out to Guesty team if you have any questions about their product. Highly recommend if you are thinking about scaling your business. Highly recommend if you're feeling that burnout to saying, oh, I'm in 5 different places. If I'm doing so many things, connecting with cleaners or trying to do messaging while I'm on dinner with the team, with my family, whatever, right? Consider looking at a PMS, right? It doesn't hurt you to spend maybe half an hour with the Guesty team, whatever the right way to get connected is. Markus, did you mention what's the right way to get connected if someone's interested?
Yeah. We had the contact screen, but people can reach out to me directly. I'm Markus at Guesty.com.
Oh man. That's brave. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Markus at Guesty.com, spelled as Markus. We'll also add in the email contact details of how to reach out to Guesty for host for starting your trial or even learning about Guesty for host, right? Again, would recommend you looking into it. Also, there are a bunch of account specific or specific questions around, hey, is this smart lock integration available? Is that available? Harder to take that during a webinar, but we'll follow up, or Guesty team will follow up with those specific questions around it. PriceLabs to Guesty for host integration is seamless, works like a charm. As with any other integrations, there are sometimes some issues, but Guesty for host team is very prompt and is in working with our team, and we figure out the solution fairly quickly. That's what we had for this webinar for you guys today. Thank you so much for sticking around. We'll, again, like I said, we'll be posting this on our YouTube channel. We'll be sending the recording via emails along with how to connect to Guesty for host, how to reach out to them for any questions that you have, and also the amazing promo that Markus had for all of you guys. And yeah, as always, keep on a lookout for our webinars. You see them inside the product, you see them via our emails. Do let us know if you have any specific things on what you want us to cover during next webinars, next trainings that can be helpful for you. But once again, thank you so much for joining in. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for Markus for taking the time. for being on this webinar. I know your time's precious, so really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you very much for having me. It's a very fun conversation. Happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. And I know, guys, we haven't been able to get to all the questions. Sincere apologies for that. But we will be getting back in touch with you over email, right? Yeah, cool.
Great.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.